Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I am Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and bringing you information more on the integrative side of medicine instead of the contemporary side. You know, with integrative medicine, we bring both worlds together. That's why we call it integrative medicine. And so today I want to introduce to you a topic that most of you, I think, have heard of. But if you haven't, this is going to be very enlightening. There is a very important piece of our health and our longevity called the microbiome. And we are going to discuss that with somebody I think is at the top of the food chain here in teaching gut microbiome, but also has a product that allows you to test your microbiome. Now, I was in Vegas for A4M, which is the American Academy of Anti-Aging Regenerative Medicine. And that is a place where, you know, most integrative people go to learn, integrative providers of any type, go to learn more about digging deeper into topics like leaky gut and the microbiome. And met this wonderful individual from a company called Jonah. And he has developed a very unique testing and of the microbiome, but also can bring a great perspective to it. And I think teach us a lot about, you know, what this is and how to test for it. So my friend, Leo Grady, good morning. You are a PhD in AI, which is amazing now that your sights have turned more into, you know, kind of health and wellness and longevity. And so please dig in and tell us who you are and how all this came to be. I'm amazed by what you've done, actually. So I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, I did my PhD in AI over 20 years ago. I've been in the healthcare industry this whole time. Started off building AI for radiology at Siemens for MRI machines and CAT scanners and ultrasound. Then I was building AI for cardiology at a company called HeartFlow, where we built a cardiovascular diagnostic test for coronary disease using AI and computational fluid dynamics. And that was actually the first Medicare payment for an AI product in healthcare back in 2018. Then I was leading a company called Page AI here in New York, which was a spin out of Memorial Sloan Kettering, doing AI for cancer detection in tissue. And about 3 years ago, I started Jonah, which is an AI company focused on the gut microbiome, to really analyze all of this complex data to figure out how your microbiome is really impacting your health, and also what you can do to change it and optimize it.
That's beautiful. And so complex is a very good word to describe the microbiome. So please introduce, and what a wonderful, history. Your knowledge is immense. And so please, I guess, define what the microbiome is and why it's important.
So today we're focusing on the gut microbiome, which is all of the organisms that live inside your gut. So this is bacteria, fungus, viruses, archaea, a whole host of different organisms that are living in your gut. If you're taking a probiotic, if you're one of the 48% of Americans that take a probiotic daily or almost daily, then the microbiome is what you're targeting with that probiotic, trying to introduce new organisms and change your microbiome in a positive way.
Yes. Yeah, good. And so that microbiome, though, is a base of many functions in our body, processing nutrients, cleaning and detoxifying, also at the basis of helping us make our brain chemistry. I mean, there's so many different things that the microbiome is important for, but it also helps our brain health and other things. So there's many diseases underlying that are tied to our microbiome, anything from depression to dementia. We're looking at cardiovascular disease, starts at the mouth too, right? Goes all the way down. It's not just our intestines. So testing it, what would be a good reason to test? Because I know that there's plenty when the microbiome becomes dysfunctional. So maybe it is overgrowing kind of the bad bacteria, can overgrow yeast and fungus and parasites and all those things. That change in the microbiome is detrimental to our health. So how does testing it make it possible to improve our health?
Well, you're absolutely right that every aspect of our health has been linked with the gut microbiome. So 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut, 50% of your dopamine, 70% of your immune cells are in your gut. And what we've seen, what the science has shown, is that it's not just GI issues that are affected by your gut microbiome. It's obesity, it's metabolic disease, it is diabetes, it's um, skin disease, cardiovascular, mental health, depression, anxiety, but also Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's, athletic performance, endurance, osteoporosis, hormone health. Really, literally every aspect of your health has been linked with the gut microbiome.
Absolutely.
But the big challenge with it is complexity. For a long time, it was very hard to measure your gut microbiome. We had to use culturing or PCR tests, which you may remember from COVID. There were very narrow panels of just looking for a few different organisms. But now we can do DNA sequencing at a cost point that is actually accessible to most people. And what that means is now we can actually sequence the DNA of everything in your gut and identify it down to a strain level. And what's exciting about that is now we can really get a comprehensive picture of what's happening in your gut. The challenge with it, though, is that you're in complete data overload when you sequence all of these different organisms, because there are 30 trillion organisms that live in your gut. They change dynamically over time. There are more than 11,000 different organisms that have been found in people's guts and linked to their health. And yet the composition of each person's gut is very individualized. You may only have, a few hundred different species in there. And so trying to figure out what's there, what amounts, what that ecosystem is saying about your health is extraordinarily complex. Purely from a data standpoint, you get about 8 gigabytes of data when you measure somebody's gut microbiome, which is about the equivalent of 8 high-resolution CAT scans.
Right. Crazy. And with that, though, so our microbiome and its makeup, different in every person, can affect their health and the potential for the diseases that they may develop, but also for diseases that they may have now. Autoimmunity, uniquely tied. You mentioned even osteoporosis, which floored me when we discussed this in Vegas. Osteoporosis is even a function from our gut microbiome. And so how does the microbiome affect health, though? And so to refine that question, if the microbiome is perfect, which I don't think anybody's could be, but there are things that might affect our microbiome from history of antibiotics, our stressors, the diet, and things like that, and we test for it, then how can we refine our health doing something about it, now and trying to affect our health forward?
Well, when we think about the mechanisms by which the microbiome impacts our health, it's really a huge number. I mean, first of all, there's having a huge impact on what nutrients get absorbed from our food. The microbiome can help us break down certain organisms better than others, or certain nutrients better than others, and absorb them. The gut microbiome is really important in maintaining the lining of the gut so that it protects your body really from different bad actors that can live in your gut. If you have a leaky gut or poor intestinal lining, you can get all sorts of microbes or lipopolysaccharides or other chemicals in your bloodstream that can have a negative impact on your health and can also cause an inflammatory response. There's a direct interaction between your microbiome and your immune system in the production of hormones, in the stimulation of the nerve system that's going up to your brain. So all of these different ways are ways in which the gut microbiome can interact with other systems in your body. And, we don't fully understand whether the microbiome is causing some of these health problems or just reflecting some of these health problems. But we do know in many cases that the microbiome is playing some sort of causal role, or at least modifying the severity of these issues. And we know that from things like microbiome transplants, where we can see really dramatic impacts on people's health, but also very unpredictable, which is very difficult to predict based on, not knowing fully how the transplanted microbiome is going to interact with somebody's body.
Gotcha. And so in testing too, I think that once you establish what a normal microbiome should be, and I think, well, let me back up too, because we have not really understood the microbiome for very long. And I think in integrative medicine, we've understood longer than more, contemporary guided medicine. And it's just now, it feels like it's just now becoming kind of exploding and becoming a big topic. But you've been on this for quite some time, and the amount of studies and data and all that are coming out, how does a person begin to filter through that and put that together? I think you've come up with a very unique way of helping to do that.
It's really difficult. Every single month, there are more than 2,000 studies published on the microbiome in the peer-reviewed medical literature. So, in fact, it's almost 3,000 a month. Yeah. I don't care who you are, how dedicated you are. There's just no way you can keep up with that many studies every single month. Absolutely. And even if you did manage to read all of those studies, trying to keep them all in your head, and as you look at somebody's microbiome test results, is nearly impossible. So what we did at Jonah is we built an AI system to read all of those studies, about 220,000 peer-reviewed studies in the scientific literature, really only looking at human studies, studies based off of stool samples using sequencing on subjects age 5 and older. So really looking at relevant studies to analyzing a person's microbiome. And then when we do the microbiome test on somebody, we do this shotgun metagenomic sequencing, we generate all of this data, then the AI is able to go through each one of these studies and compare the findings from that study to your microbiome test results, and to say, are there any patterns in this person's gut that have been flagged in the literature and shown to be associated with different aspects of your health? So you can think of it almost like if you were to do a genetic test and find that a certain gene is linked with a certain disease or with differences in your metabolism. We're basically able to do the same thing from the gut with the gut microbiome, except that the gut microbiome is more complex. It's much more individualized, and but the good news is it's also changeable. We have a lot in our control on how we can shape the gut microbiome. So if we do see some of these patterns that are linked with disease or poor health, there are ways that we can actually change them to address them and make them better.
But you have cornerstone very, very well as you went through the test results and showed us what your data points can do and what can be done about it. Because most testing can give you information. What the heck do you do about it, right? And then with all the brand new information coming out, staying up to date, for somebody, a provider, let alone somebody who's just trying to heal their own body, is immense. It's deep and it's impossible. So you said that very eloquently. So if you are testing and getting an idea of what somebody's balance is, their bacterial balance and microorganism balance is, how can that, getting that information change what they are doing moving forward?
So let's say, for an example, that a certain disease is linked with elevated levels of an organism, or maybe deficient levels of another organism. There's also a whole lot of studies on the microbiome that show how different dietary changes, lifestyle changes, supplements, probiotics will change the levels in your organisms, in your gut. So if we know that somebody is too high in an organism and that's linked with a disease, the AI is also then able to look through all of the studies on how to change your microbiome to see which ways will actually lower that organism. Or if you're deficient in certain organisms, what are all the ways that we can level up that organism in your body? And so effectively what we do is we built a simulation engine, a digital twin of your gut, that basically, once we do this analysis, then we can simulate what does this person look like if they go vegan, right? We know how going vegan is going to shift the organisms in your gut based on all these studies. And so we can apply that shift to you virtually and make a virtual vegan version of you and say, okay, does that vegan version of you have less of these, disease patterns, more of the health patterns, and then we can do the same thing with keto, with gluten-free, with different supplements or different exercise routines, all that have been studied in the literature.
Amazing.
And based on whatever disease patterns that have been found in your gut, the AI can take all of these interventional studies and with the simulation engine, optimize for you a personalized protocol that's going to lower the organisms that need to be lowered, raise the organisms that need to be raised in just the right way that is tailored for you personally.
Which is crazy. So mind blowing. And imagine, you go and you ask your doctor, say for a hemoglobin A1C, which measures, the average glucose over the last 3 months, trying to detect diabetes, and you get your result back. What do you do with that, right? Your doctor has about 10, 15 minutes, maybe, if you're lucky, to hand you information and teach you information on what you can do to change that. And we all know it has long-term effects. And so this is very important. It would take hours to sit down and explain to somebody how much, you need to do in order to change it. What you've done is take a topic that is larger than life. The microbiome really is at this point. And I think once contemporary medicine really grasps how big the microbiome effects are on us and tries to tear that down and get results and give that to patients, we're going to find it's next to impossible to spend the amount of time with a patient, personalize it, and give them a list of things that they can actually do to change it on a timeline and things they can do long term. That is what this test does. And it's so just mind-blowing that you can go get your labs done, you get nothing really except results, but on this side you can actually get a plan of care. So it's really, really a wonderful thing that you've done, and the amount of information that a patient gets from that. The doctor, let alone we get that information, we can filter through that, but the amount of data that a patient gets is absolutely amazing. But what I love about it too, and you can explain, is that it updates, right? So if there's 2,000, 3,000 studies coming out, every month, do you have to do the test every month to get the latest data? And that's the question I pose to you.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, at Jonah, we often say that we think that the gut microbiome testing is going to be more common than blood work in the future because it does affect so much of your health. And it's so modifiable and so actionable. And so not to say that, blood work is going anywhere, but it's a different lens in which to look at your health. And I see microbiome testing to be part of somebody's annual checkup or as part of, a diagnostic workup or management of chronic issues in the future. And we're already getting there today. I mean, more and more conventional doctors are starting to use Jonah because it is evidence-based, because it is transparent, and really making that available to their patients and using it as part of the assessment and treatment planning. To your point on all of the updates, you're exactly right. I mean, with this AI engine, the AI engine is capable of reading all of those new studies that come out every single month. And if you log back in and look at your Jonah results, those are going to be updated with all of the latest research. Now, that's not going to shift so much from month to month because, there's already a huge body of literature out there and a lot of studies that have already been done.
Yes.
But as that literature accumulates, as new science starts to come out and shed light on different things, you're going to see those results get updated, really in perpetuity forever. We're going to keep updating those results. Now, a year from now, your microbiome may have changed, and so you may want to retest and reanalyze, but we're going to keep reanalyzing the data that you had, the last time you did your Jonah results.
Absolutely. So, and I love how you mentioned this should become a part of a preventative care visit. Yeah, that's an understatement. I really believe, as you do, that this should be a part of a preventative care update. So you're doing that. And then if you have a disease, which almost everything is linked to microbiome, then you can use it to continue to follow a patient and ensure that they are improving, and that you're getting somewhere in their management. Say somebody gets a bad sinusitis, has to take a lot of antibiotics, you get cornered, you have to do that. You can find out how much that has changed at that point. I don't think people realize, I heard a stat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard a stat that, taking a Z-Pack can alter your microbiome for up to 2 years. I mean, it instantly changes it, and it may take 2 years to recover it. And I'm not sure we ever do, honestly, recover it. And so if we can step back for just a second and maybe go over a few things that affect how do we come to have microbiome issues? I mean, we start at birth with, you come through the mother's vaginal canal, you collect all of the bacteria on your skin, and that, gets into your system through the mouth and establishes a good population there. And from there, you get antibiotics through your childhood, your dietary needs change as you grow and all of that. But what other things can affect your microbiome and cause disease down the line?
Well, you're right. It starts at birth. Whether a baby is born vaginally or through cesarean, actually will seed their microbiome quite differently. Now,
nurses' hands, right? Like nursing hand. If you're a C-section, the nurse takes you to the warmer, and that could be our mother's hands or whatnot. That may be where they collect it, and that's not the ideal situation, right?
Well, it has an impact, right? And
Sure.
whether the mother is nursing or whether there's formula also has an impact, because
Sure.
a nursing mother is actually passing organisms through her milk into the baby that help the baby digest the milk,
Thank
and
you.
ultimately also help seed the baby's gut microbiome.
Thank you.
A lot of things can affect it over the course of a person's life. You mentioned antibiotics, but obviously diet, lifestyle, geography, environmental factors, even like temperature, humidity.
Right.
All these different things can affect a person's gut microbiome. But also surprising things, like if you have food poisoning and you're vomiting for a few days, we've seen studies where one round of food poisoning can permanently change a person's gut microbiome. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worse,
Sure.
but it may be different. One researcher actually was studying his microbiome, measuring it every day for a year, and he got food poisoning during that. And you saw for about 2 weeks after, his microbiome was just in chaos. It was just going all over the place. And then it stabilized into something that was different than before he had the food poisoning. And I heard him give a talk recently, and he said after that, all of his seasonal allergies went away. And
Wow.
he credits like that change in his microbiome with impacting his seasonal allergies. I mean, it's hard to say on a single case, but certainly you can see that like a very permanent change in his gut microbiome after that single episode of food poisoning.
Which is interesting, because I think most of the time we think getting certain bacterial infections or viral infections or whatnot are always bad for us. Not necessarily. I think by the time we die, I think our DNA has incorporated, maybe 70% change and into something viral, and it can change us for the better. So there can be kind of a symbiotic relationship there. So that's I think a point you shed light on there. And so I think that we'll take a short break here in a second and come back and talk a little bit about the test and how to get it. And I'll give you a chance here if you have something to add to that. But I want people to know where to find you. But please add to your thought there.
I was just going to say, I mean, you're right. Your microbiome can change for the better. It can change for the worse. That's why I think it's important to keep an eye on it and to monitor your microbiome at least once a year.
Yes, absolutely. If not disease management sooner than that, which is terrific. Yeah. So we're going to talk more about how to access that and whatnot. But where can people find out more information from you?
So you can go to our website, jonah.health. You can find us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and you can also find me personally in those places. And I always welcome connections and direct outreach.
Which is great. And so please keep in mind too, it's Jona. Instead, I think people want to add an H at some point. So Jona and .health, and great website and great information. You can also find out more if you just go to mine, drpbetterlife.com, as well as some other great topics for almost the last 4 years, which is fantastic. And so we are going to take a very short break, come back on the other side and talk about more about this wonderful, wonderful testing.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is DeNovo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes DeNovo Plus B12 so successful? DeNovo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about DeNovo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
I appreciate Magna and all of their help in the last couple of years. They are a wonderful group of people and a small little company, and definitely appreciate that. So we are back with Leo Grady and talking about Jonah, microbiome testing. I wanted to ask you something too, kind of before we get to the actual testing, and that is that there will be therapies that are available, and kind of delineate those a bit from dietary, which I think is most important, dietary, lifestyle, all of those things, but also there can be some supplemental changes that people can make, and those are things that you highlight in the results as well. Knowing that people need to take this to their provider, of course, and incorporate that, personally, and so everything is suggestion. But tell us kind of the different ways that, patients can take get their testing done and then take their results. And if they can do that on their own, if their doctor isn't quite open to the thought of microbiome testing, can they do that on their own or, ask their provider? How does this work?
Most people do it through the provider. However, we do offer it on our website. Anyone can go and order it directly from the website. And in terms of how to action on it, you can play with your own digital twin if you order it yourself, where you can tell the AI to optimize different aspects of your gut microbiome. If you're more concerned about one, disease pattern than another, you can have the AI really try to optimize the protocol for targeting certain patterns in your gut microbiome that you may be more concerned about. And we try to make it easy for you to enact these recommendations as well. So, once you have this personalized protocol, we give you a grocery list that is tailored for you that you can take to the store with you. And, you can go shopping according to it. And that everything on that list will be in accordance with the protocol. So we really try to make it easy for people to follow. We do make recommendations on supplements and probiotics, but not specific brands.
Sure.
And we made the decision not to sell probiotics ourselves, not to make them, not to recommend specific companies. And the reason for that is really comes down to trust. There is so much snake oil in the microbiome world, and people making promises and really not being evidence-backed and transparent about it. And so we really wanted to remove any concern about bias of trying to upsell somebody. And so we made that decision to only recommend strains or supplements in the generic form based on existing studies that have been published in the peer-reviewed literature. But we don't actually recommend particular brands or sell any of that ourselves. So we'll tell you, find a probiotic that contains these strains or avoids these strains, but then we don't tell you, who to go buy.
Which is wonderful. So that was the thing I think that struck me the most as we visited about a lot of things in Vegas was the integrity behind all of this. And, that's what I try to bring to my my audience and to my patients is, the fact that integrity is very important and trust is very important. And I think the results that you get from this microbiome testing is beyond amazing. What I love about it too, and I want to highlight what you said, is that you do get a nice list of like the grocery list, the dietary recommendations. You can also, though, you get a laundry list of different disease states, different potential for disease states, or based on a kind of a questionnaire at the beginning of what are you experiencing? What is your history? So that is how that gets personalized, correct? How to explain how you kind of come up with that personalization?
So we ask in the beginning if you're experiencing, bloating, if you're experiencing skin rashes, a huge list of potential issues, fatigue. But we also ask about any diagnoses that you have that we should be aware of.
Sure.
We ask about your diet, we ask about your sleep patterns, really try to understand you currently. The answers that you provide in that intake don't affect the analysis, right? Because your analysis is based just purely on what we measure in your gut. And so if we see certain organisms that are linked to certain diseases, we're going to tell you that regardless of how you answer those questions. Right. However, when it comes to the action plan, that's where your responses have a bigger impact, because we really want to tailor that to you and to the things that you're concerned about. So if you say, I'm experiencing constipation, depression, fatigue, but I'm not experiencing certain other things, even if we see evidence of other issues in your microbiome, the default is going to be to target on optimizing for what you're experiencing, what you're reporting. Correct. And if we find that you're already doing something, or your diet already contains something that would be recommended or indicated, then that's not going to be part of your personalized protocol because you're already doing it. Likewise, if you say, I have a lactose allergy or something like that, then we're not going to be recommending lactose in that personalized protocol. So the intake is really important. It doesn't affect the analysis. It doesn't affect what we measure in your microbiome or what that means for your health, but it does affect the personalization of the protocol that gets calculated for you.
Which is fantastic. So you are also collecting data on people and personal information. And I know many people are very concerned about keeping their information private. Mm-hmm. And so you do that and explain how that works. Because I know when 23andMe, for instance, went down, there was a lot of DNA information on patients that was sold to another company, et cetera. So I know that's a huge concern. Another area of trust and integrity here, I'd love for you to explain.
Yeah, we take privacy extremely seriously at Jonah. So first of all, we comply with HIPAA. We're not technically required to, but we are fully compliant with HIPAA. We have controls in-house that really prevent access to people's data. So even myself as the CEO, if somebody asks me to review their results with them, I have to file a request form. I have to show that the person consented to it. We put that consent in a database so that we know that somebody authorized me to look at their results. And only then am I able to actually access somebody's results. So we really put in place a lot of privacy protections. The other part of that is security, really ensuring that it's not easy to be hacked and putting in modern security processes and protocols, but separating out the personal health information from any data or intake information. So that if we do look at aggregate data of organisms that are trending or whatnot in the population that's completely separated from any identifying information about an individual. You mentioned the example of 23andMe. Obviously, genetics are very unique to an individual. I mean, that's how we solve crimes now,
Right.
to ID somebody. But that's less true with the gut microbiome. Because your gut microbiome can change, two people can have the same gut microbiome. It's extremely rare. But your gut microbiome is going to change. And so doesn't have the same sort of individualized ID capacity that your genetics will.
Absolutely. And thank you for highlighting that, because it's very, very important. And one thing I kind of want to back up on a little bit that I feel was left out, my fault, that the importance of the microbiome and oral health, because that most people don't, right? Again, we think of the intestine, right? We think of the gut as just the intestine, but there is a huge impact from oral health. And can you go over that a bit?
Well, I mean, the oral health, the mouth is the entry point to the GI system, right?
Thank you. Yes.
And so, so not only is everything that gets into the GI tract coming in through the mouth in the first place, but even your oral microbiome plays an important role in your health. Many people don't realize that the tonsils and the adenoids are actually parts of your immune system that are scanning things that come into your mouth for a need for an immune response. Bits of food that get in your mouth if you're not flossing, et cetera, that can ultimately result in periodontal disease, things getting in your bloodstream through your oral cavity. Can have a huge impact on your health. And we're seeing a lot of studies that have shown that the oral microbiome is linked to everything from mental health to rheumatoid arthritis. However, it's just much less studied than the gut.
Sure.
And most of the studies have looked at it from the standpoint of the entryway to the gut rather than its own ecosystem on its own. But I think we're going to learn much more about that over time. And I do think we will see a world in the future where we're monitoring our oral microbiome as well as our gut microbiome.
Absolutely. And I'll highlight too, as far as testing goes, that, patients can access on their own. But I think if you do that and you just stand on results and read all of this and interpret on your own, that you're missing out on a huge amount of assistance that you can get in changing your health and making your health better. And a great qualified provider, who understands the microbiome and leaky gut is a huge necessity. And I say provider because there are plenty of nurse practitioners and PAs, physicians who, are well versed in this. And so please, if you do, do this on your own, get your results, please contact somebody and, go to a trusted provider and let them assist you in deciphering how much of this information is there. I think people want to diagnose themselves, and that can be a little bit of a dangerous road. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%, 100%. We always recommend talking to your doctor or provider about any of your health results, and for a lot of reasons. One is that obviously they can help you contextualize your microbiome results. At Jonah, our AI system is reading all of the studies on the microbiome and doing these simulations for the gut microbiome. But there's more to your health than your gut microbiome. Even as important as it is, we're not looking at your blood work. We're not looking at your hormones. We're not looking at, you as an individual. We're looking at your microbiome. And so if we're giving you recommendations based on your gut microbiome, but we're missing information about, your blood work or something else, that's really where your doctor or your healthcare provider can step in and integrate all of that information and put it together for you. At another angle on this, if we find some sort of, DNA from a pathogen or a parasite in your gut, that may require some sort of medical attention, and it may not as well. I mean, just being colonized doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. But again, this is something you should be addressing with your healthcare provider and not trying to, go on a cleanse or something like that on your own. It's really something that requires, professional attention.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because it really, I think a lot of people are learning. I encourage that, learning much about their health and their own bodies, and what their potentials are. But I still think we need plenty of guidance from that aspect. So thank you.
Yeah, and we really try to facilitate that learning as well. So if you look at at Jonah and you click around in your results, if you take any disease or any health condition, and you click on, say, fatigue, you'll see all the organisms that have been linked to fatigue. You'll be able to access all of the studies that have linked those organisms to fatigue. We actually link you out to the source studies. And similarly, if we're making recommendations, you can click on, why fermented foods? What are fermented foods doing to my body? What are they doing to my microbiome? Why is that important to me? And then again, link out to all of the studies that have established, how fermented foods are changing your microbiome. Yeah. And then also, even if you just want to go deep on some organism and look at, bifidobacterium or lactobacillus, we'll pull up all of the different literature on those for you, tell you what it's been connected to in your health, and really just tell you a lot more about those organisms. So for those in the audience that are just really interested and want to go deep, you can spend hours just like checking around and learning through Jonah. We try to design it in a way that if all you want are answers, you can go in and you can get answers. But if you really want to go deep, there's sort of like an endless well that you can go through.
Rabbit hole, which is important. I want people to audience to understand that I'm learning a lot too. As a provider, I feel like I'm well versed on the microbiome, but I can tell you I know about that much of that much. Really, there's much to learn. So encourage your provider if they're not. If this is something that's new to them, encourage them that this can help them learn as well. We're always learning and changing and growing. That's the responsibility of a good provider, is to keep learning. So, you can encourage that. I think sometimes the information like this can be a little intimidating to a country doctor that, I went to medical school a long time ago. But this is an important part of our learning as well, and I encourage that. So that's great.
Well, we actually just launched a clinical education series as well for doctors. It's taught by our chief medical officer, who's a GI, a gastroenterologist, and is on the governing board of the American Gastroenterological Association, and just really very prominent doctor. And so that education series is really aimed at doctors who haven't been able to necessarily keep up with all the latest on the microbiome. But that's also available, through the clinical portal that a provider gets when they sign on with Jonah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So please recommend this to your provider. Open that door, because this is phenomenal. I am significantly impressed with what you have done, and applaud not only what you've done, but your integrity behind it, and appreciate that as well. I think this is the future. Again, you mentioned this is not the only thing that we have to focus on when we look at patients, but this is significant. And thank you for taking that on, because somebody had to do that. Have we left out anything, any words that, or anything, topics that you thought might be good to address for the audience?
No, I think maybe the only thing I would mention is that, the reason that we called the company Jonah is because of the story of Jonah and the whale, of Jonah going inside the belly of the whale and emerging enlightened. And it's really a story of personal transformation and, taking control of your own destiny, which I thought was just a beautiful metaphor for what we're trying to do at the company, at Jonah, of going inside the gut, bringing forth that wisdom, and really helping people achieve whatever transformation they're looking for, whether it's about getting healthier or getting more fit or losing weight or whatever it is. We really want to help support them and facilitate them with all the information about their gut. Absolutely.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was wonderful when we heard that part of the story too. How this goes. Jonah, how does a name of Jonah, come to encompass the microbiome. I think it's a beautiful story. So I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to getting my own testing done. We're going to do that at the turn of the year here. Me, the husband, the kids, everybody. I really do think this is very important and I applaud it. Where can people find you?
You can go to our website at jonah.health, or you can find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and me personally too, on all of those platforms. Please reach out. I love to hear from people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so remember, Jonah is Jona, doesn't have the H on the end. Unique. So jonah.health. And then you can go to my website as well, drpbetterlife.com, and find out all this information and links, but also some other shows, which there's some shows on leaky gut way back there. So please scroll back and find those older shows. And I hope to see you again one day with some fantastic updates and new information. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for your education today. And I hope that everybody has a fantastic week. Take care of each other out there as always. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.